It was meant to be a straightforward system, simple, reliable, and guaranteed to help pensioners weather the harshest months of the year. But as temperatures drop across Britain, so too does faith in the government's ability to deliver critical support. The winter fuel payment crisis has erupted into a scandal of epic proportions, with delays that leave pensioners waiting over 100 days for financial aid they were counting on. The Labour government's controversial reforms to means test the payment have created a storm of inefficiency, heartbreak and betrayal, plunging some of the most vulnerable citizens into a terrifying winter of uncertainty. The chaos began in July, when Labour announced sweeping changes to the winter fuel payment, restricting eligibility to those receiving pension credit rather than extending it universally to state pensioners. The move, framed as a way to streamline resources, unleashed a wave of panic among pensioners who scrambled to apply for pension credit in order to qualify. What followed was a surge in applications that overwhelmed the Department for Work and Pensions, doubling their workload overnight and exposing the system's glaring inability to handle such demand. Since the announcement, over 150,000 pension credit claims have flooded the DWP, more than twice the 61,000 received during the same period the year before. But with limited staff and outdated infrastructure, the department has fallen catastrophically behind. By mid-November, 91,075 claims remained unprocessed, leaving elderly Britons stranded in a bureaucratic nightmare. The average wait time for a response is now 65 working days, far exceeding the previous 30-day target, which itself had already been quietly extended to 50 days. As temperatures plummet, so too does hope for pensioners waiting in the dark. Christopher Hewitt, a 69-year-old from Norfolk, is among those trapped in the system's labyrinthine delays. After suffering a debilitating fall that fractured his vertebrae, ribs and pelvis, he and his wife were forced to move in with their daughter, a single mother, while he recovered. Their already strained finances relied on receiving the winter fuel payment, but after 120 days with no update on his pension credit application, Hewitt was left in limbo. He had applied immediately following Labour's announcement in July, only to be met with silence. "To be honest, it's a bit tight as things are at the moment," Hewitt confessed. His story is tragically common, and only after intervention by the Independent was his case prioritised. Yet the intervention came too late to undo the anxiety and discomfort that had already plagued his family during the coldest months of the year. For Mary Cavill, 69, the situation is equally dire. Having applied for pension credit in September, she was told to expect a decision by November. Instead, she received no communication until, that is, she was sent a letter advising her to apply for pension credit once again. The mix-up left Cavill frustrated and fearful. With no sign of her winter fuel payment and the cost of living soaring, she expressed growing despair over her heating costs. "How am I going to keep warm if I can't afford to have the heating on for more than half an hour in the morning and a couple of hours at night?" she asked. The indignity of begging for what should have been a straightforward entitlement has left many pensioners feeling abandoned. The government's promises to resolve the backlog ring hollow for those who shiver in their homes, unable to turn on the heat. The DWP claims to have added 500 staff to handle the surge in applications, but critics argue that this gesture is too little, too late. Caroline Abrahams, a director at Age UK, described the situation as a damning indictment of poor planning. "The benefits system was never designed to cope with such an upsurge in demand," she said, blaming the Treasury for failing to anticipate the consequences of their reforms. Meanwhile, welfare advisors across the country are inundated with complaints, with pensioners reporting waits of 3 months or more and no clear timeline for resolution. Political outrage over the scandal has been swift. Tory Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary Helen Whately blasted Labour for their handling of the crisis, saying, "It beggars belief that they are making some of the country's poorest pensioners wait until spring to get help with the cost of heating this winter." Liberal Democrat spokesperson Steve Darling was equally scathing, labelling the delays unacceptable and calling on Labour to reverse their decision to means test the payment. First, the government slashes winter fuel support for vulnerable pensioners. Then, they keep people worried for months as they wait for their applications to be processed. It's an appalling failure of leadership. But it isn't just the winter fuel payment crisis that has pensioners enraged. Labour's decision to deny compensation to women against state pension inequality, WASPI, women has only added fuel to the fire. These women, born in the 1950s, were blindsided by changes to the state pension age and have campaigned tirelessly for justice. Despite a recommendation from the Parliament and Health Service Ombudsman for payouts of up to £3,000, Labour has steadfastly refused to provide compensation, leaving millions of women feeling betrayed. The fallout has been seismic. A recent poll of nearly 11,000 WASPI women revealed that just 7% now support Labour, while support for Reform UK has surged to 24%. Many feel that Labour has abandoned them in their time of need, prioritising political expediency over justice. Angela Madden, chair of the WASPI campaign, didn't mince words. Labour's betrayal of WASPI women will cost them dearly at the ballot box. Even Diane Abbott, one of Labour's most prominent figures and a WASPI woman herself, criticised her party's failure to address the issue. When they say they didn't hear about it, they're quite correct, she said, recounting her own experience of being blindsided by the changes. Abbott also took aim at Labour's leadership, suggesting that the time has come to rethink how the party makes decisions. As public outrage mounts, the political consequences for Labour are becoming impossible to ignore. The Liberal Democrats have threatened to force a Commons vote on the WASPI issue when Parliament returns after Christmas, with whispers that up to 100 Labour MPs may side with the opposition. Meanwhile, the party's refusal to acknowledge the full extent of the winter fuel payment crisis has only deepened mistrust among voters. Adding to the nation's growing sense of unease is the plight of business owners like Jeremy Clarkson, whose Cotswolds pub venture has become a symbol of Britain's broader economic struggles. Since opening the Farmer's Dog in August, Clarkson has faced one disaster after another. From theft and staffing shortages to unsold Christmas turkeys and oversized trees, his festive season has been anything but merry. In his own words, behind the scenes, everything is a total disaster. Clarkson's candid criticism of the challenges facing small businesses in Starmer's Britain has struck a chord with many. His financial losses, £10 for every customer who walks through the door, highlight the economic pressures that extend far beyond pensioners. It's a bitter winter for everyone, it seems, and the government's inability to provide meaningful support only exacerbates the crisis. From freezing pensioners to struggling business owners, the picture that emerges is one of a nation left in the cold, literally and metaphorically. Labour's reforms, intended to streamline benefits and target the most vulnerable, have instead created chaos and alienation. The promises of additional support, including the £150 warm home discount and cold weather payments, feel like empty platitudes to those still waiting for the help they were promised. For pensioners like Christopher Hewitt and Mary Cavill, the damage is already done. The winter months will not wait for bureaucratic delays, and the cost of this scandal, both financial and emotional, will be felt for years to come. As Labour scrambles to contain the fallout, one question lingers in the frosty air. How did it come to this?